Hey, Seahorse peeps, happy Wine Wednesday. Kelly's sipping on Chardonnay, but she couldn't find the wine glass, so I'm sipping on Seahorse Whisperer gear. Don't forget, guys, even though the website's not done, we can still do t-shirts. I'm about to try to get on TikTok because I heard that's the way to go with shops. And we need to get some Seahorse gear out there. Anyhow, happy Wine Wednesday. Didn't have a specific topic, and I did not advertise this, apologies, but we had an excellent question in the Seahorse Whisperer group on Facebook's Messenger. If you're a member of the group and if you're a member of the YouTube page, you're part of this chat. And if you're not, well, I'm about to tell you what happened. Basically, Bonnie asked, actually, let me back up and just say, the topic that we have tonight is feeding seahorses. However, it is also open chat. So if you have any questions, anything you want to discuss, anything you want to ask, that's what we're here for. We're here for the community. And last week was really fun because we had a bunch of reef keepers with us. Maybe not seahorse people, and the conversation was still amazing because we were talking about equipment and a lot of the stuff transfers over. With science, Fish Talk. We do a lot with Robert King. We do a lot with a lot of people to try to, overlap and just be a bigger community. So if you're joining us for the first time, make sure to subscribe to the channel. If you're on Facebook, make sure that you go over and subscribe or join the Seahorse Whisperer group. Make sure to check out the Seahorse Whisperer gear. This one I made for, I think, Matthew. It literally says coffee counts on Wine Wednesday, right? Grab your mug and let's chat. So I'm drinking from my mug tonight. Anyways, we want to talk about feeding seahorses a little bit because let me pull it up here and tell you the question that we got, and then we can dive into the details. So, and of course it's going to give me a hassle yet again. Okay, so the original question was, let me read it, if I can get to it. So, sorry guys. All right. So, this person asked a question of somewhere else about feeding seahorses. And it said, as a general rule of thumb, feeding adult Hippocampus erectus, such as feeding Hippocampus erectus 4 to 6 frozen mysis twice daily is more than sufficient. This was the advice given. That is based on the jumbo frozen mysis relicta. Okay, anyways, from PE mysis, right? The jumbos. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. And if you're using a smaller brand of mysis like Hickory, you need to feed more. There was also a question about fry and about dwarf seahorses, but let's just dive into what you guys think, because obviously if you're in that group, you saw my responses. I will also give them live. But Ray, what are your thoughts about feeding 4 to 6 jumbo shrimp to each seahorse twice a day?
Well, it's hard to comment with any authority because out of 7 species, I've never had any that would take the jumbo shrimp that I have. The jumbo shrimp that I have are Hikari jumbo, and I've never ever in 21 years got any to eat it.
Okay.
Occasionally, let's see. When I tried it with the Barbary, occasionally one would pick at a jumbo, but they didn't go at it with any enthusiasm. They would prefer the smaller stuff. So I don't have any authority on actually keeping them alive on just jumbo shrimp. However, based on seahorse physiology, knowing that they don't have a stomach, their digestive tract is so rudimentary that they cannot get much out of it. They can't extract a lot of nutrition out of their digestive tract or out of the food going through the digestive tract before it passes out as feces. So keeping that in mind, looking at what actually happens in nature, the seahorses are grazing basically. They're feeding sporadically throughout the day. They don't fill up and guzzle down everything in half an hour or 15 minutes or whatever, and then go without for a long time. And that suits that physiological situation that they have with their digestive tract, because it's slower going through that digestive tract. The more food that you put in that digestive tract, the faster it goes through, and the less the seahorse is able to take out in the form of nutrition. And that's two things. First of all, the seahorse can't build up his immune system and his own health as good as if he gets it at a slower pace. And the other factor is you're passing more nutrient-laden feces out into the water to help cause problems with pathogens.
Organic. So real quick, I have a couple other questions for you, just to recap what you just said for anybody who's a little less, scientific like me. Basically, the two things you just mentioned are, if you feed seahorses a bunch of food at once, then they will gobble it down. But then as it goes through them, as would any creature, they're not getting the nutrients because it's going through too quick. It's like pushing itself out, right? Like going down,
Correct.
pushing itself out. And then if that happens, then you've got more organics problems because all you did was create more waste, right?
Not just organics. You can end up with nuisance algae problems as well.
Yep, absolutely. And so when people ask you how to feed seahorses, how much, like, I know people would love to have an answer like that. Oh, you need to feed exactly 7.5 mices to every seahorse, this many times a day. It's not possible, because my answer always is you got to learn your seahorses, right? You got to figure out them. And I have ways that I mentioned doing it, but what is your recommendation when someone asks you about that, Ray?
What I recommend is based on my 21 years of experience.
Absolutely.
But people have succeeded in keeping seahorses with lesser programs than what I do.
Mm-hmm.
But part of that is going to lock in with the individual seahorses that they may have gotten. And some may have luck with some, and they may lose others. And that could be because not all the seahorses had the capability of surviving, excuse me, under the conditions that they're being fed. So I found, and it took me over a decade to find out, that my seahorses were much healthier and much more resistant to pathogen exposure if I fed them whatever they would eat in 12 to 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, later on, I even stepped that down to 10 to 12, but I recommend to people go with the 12 to 15. Whatever they'll eat in 12 to 15 minutes, and do it 4 times a day. Now, some people say, well, they can't because they're working and they have this problem and that problem. But the thing is, you can, even if you can spread it out half an hour between when they finish a feeding and when they start the next one, that's sufficient for the food to remain in that digestive tract longer and have more nutrient removed from it, which helps the seahorse and it helps your water quality. And so you get up in the morning, you can feed them when they get up, and before you go to work, it's usually going to be more than half an hour. Give them another feeding. When you come home at night, feed them again, and then before you go to bed, feed them a 4th time. There's variations that you can do on that, but the main thing is to get some separation so that they're getting time to remove that nutrient from what's in their digestive tract before they pass it out. They're not going to get it all out, even under the best of circumstances. But but we should be able to maximize what they get, to the potential that they do have.
Right. Let it sit, give them a little time in between. Even a half an hour is enough. I get what you're saying. And
For me, whenever, like, I've always had multiple tanks other than my very first year. Well, even at the end of the first year, I was into multiple tanks then. But every tank is different. I can't use the same feeding program. Now, mind you, in my early years, I did, because I didn't understand a lot of what I have learned. And so basically, every tank, like even when I had 4 separate tanks of the Barbary, same number of Seahorses, same number of power heads in it, same number, same filtration, everything, I had to feed different.
Yep.
Because the Seahorses were slightly different.
Yep.
Now, mind you, if I remember correctly, I think 2 of the tanks probably I fed the same, and the other 2 are slightly different. And it wasn't a big difference, but it's enough to make a difference long term to a Seahorse. Now, I'm not talking a year or 2 years. Some people feel if they've kept them a year or 2 years, then that's success.
You're right.
To me, that's not success.
No. And I just want to agree with what you've said so far, Ray, because absolutely, I could sit here and tell you, and I have a video out there explaining how I figure out how much to feed my Seahorses every time. If Zen's in here, maybe she can post it again for me like she did last week. But I have a video about the 3 feeding methods, and then I have a video about figuring out how much to feed and how to feed them. These are old videos, guys, so don't make fun of me. But the information is
very simple, though, basically.
Well, it is, but when you describe,
it's just a case of feeding them and then timing it, and you have to be there to watch them. You see if they're going to consume what you're giving them in that time period. If they're not consuming it all, then the next feeding you back it off.
I get it, but I think, Ray, there's a short-term and a long-term part of this. So, like, for short-term, what you're describing is exactly what I explained. Throw the food in, see what they eat in 15 minutes, remove the rest. Feed less the next time, but I always start big. Like, I give them more than I think they need so that they can, see what they'll eat, right? And of course, when you have new Seahorses, you got to play with it for probably a week, because if it's the first day, they're probably still being shy, right? So, but I overfeed, remove everything that's left over after 15-ish minutes, and then the next day feed a little, see how much I have to remove. And then you get, like Vincent was saying in the chat, that he uses the flat packs. So it's not like we can say, oh yeah, feed to 4 to 6 mysis. I don't think that's a good recommendation. And I couldn't even tell you feed 1 cube or 2 cubes, because I do flat packs usually. So it's literally, I just have this that I know that tank needs, right? And this one needs, and whatever. And I know how much to break off. And that's what I then rinse and feed to the tank. And I am always careful still to remove any excess, but there's usually not any, because I've kind of fine-tuned it. So I think, Ray, you did a good job describing it, and then I kind of followed it up and backtracked it. But the long-term thing is, and the thing that I said to the person in the chat, is that if you do start to notice that your Seahorse's sides are caving in, you're not feeding enough. And once you get to that point, it's almost really hard to correct it. I've done it, but I just think it's I think it's a better idea to not. When I say overfeed, I don't mean overfeed, dump a bunch of food in the tank. It's what we're talking about, right? Figuring out how much they can eat in 15 minutes, making sure they get enough of those 15-minute feedings so that never happens. Is there a way you determine that, Ray?
In the way I determine what?
Like we're talking about figuring out how much they eat in 15 minutes, We're figuring out how many times a day to feed them, but how do you make sure that they never end up not getting enough food, right? Like,
They're going to get enough if you're going to do it 4 times with just what they're going to eat in 12 or 15 minutes.
okay, all right. Holly, what's your
But the
thought?
thing is, a lot of people don't take into account that what you learn initially with them is it's going to change.
Yeah,
As they grow larger, they're going to need more food and they're going to eat more.
true.
Um, and there are other situations. For instance, most males, when they get pregnant, go into sort of a secluded state and they do not feed near as much.
Yep.
Now, they would be healthier if they would, but for some reason, they just don't. And if that's the case, you have to back off to feeding there just for tank water purposes, if nothing else.
And this has said this, but I swear to you, in every tank of Erectus, not other species, but in every tank of Erectus, my females always back off eating when they're making the eggs inside of themselves. I don't know how to say it the proper way, but like I'll notice a female acting funny and she's kind of standoffish and she's not eating much, which you'd think she'd be eating more, right? But nope, she'll back off and then all of a sudden they'll do an egg exchange. She'll look really thin and then everything will be fine. So again, this just goes to show it depends on your seahorses, and you will learn them. You will figure it out. It's not like rocket science here. It's just, paying attention to what's going on. Go ahead, Ray, and then I want to let Holly talk.
You just have to understand that even when you get it down, you think you got it right, it's going to change at some point.
Yep.
And it's also, if you're watching your seahorses for things like that all the time, it's also a good way to catch something early before a problem happens.
Absolutely.
Because if a seahorse goes off its food, male or female, and they're not in a pregnancy situation, then I'd be a little bit concerned and I'd be looking for a solution to it. Maybe you don't have to upgrade your protocols right immediately, but if it goes on for 3 or 4 days in a row, then I would go ahead and change things to make that water quality up to another notch higher.
Absolutely. And Cora Works said because they're craving pickles and peanut butter, not mysis. I mean, maybe, right? But mine will only eat mysis. So, maybe some brine shrimp here and there. But yeah. And Cora Works also said earlier.
Now they're looking for amphipods.
Yeah, we have a debate about amphipods on this channel because Cheryl swears they're good with them. Mine never have eaten them. Yours do. Hers don't. It depends on your seahorses. If they'll eat them, cool, awesome, feed them, right? But just make sure they get that main basis of so many feedings of so much. I like I said, the reason I brought up the topic is because I do disagree with saying, 4 to 6 jumbo shrimp twice a day is good enough. I just think that's not, I do not agree with that advice, is the point I'm trying to make. Cora Works also said earlier, is this one of those less is more things? And I responded, less more often, right? So it's not like they need more food than most fish. I think, Ray, didn't you compare them to a tang? Will you give us that comparison again, please?
Well, it's not comparing them to a tang. It's just that a tang has the same type of digestive tract where a tang, and there's other fish as well, but the tang specifically we're talking about doesn't have a stomach.
Mm-hmm.
The digestive tract works similar to what a seahorse does, and the tang has to graze throughout the day. For the tang to be healthy and resist things like the ick that they're so prone to, then as long as they can feed through that day and keep themselves
Nutrient.
So they need to be rounded out as well, not really flat. I see so many tangs over my history in this where the tangs are basically straight sided.
Yep.
They have no body to them.
Nope.
And then eventually they get ick, they die, and people keep saying, well, what's wrong?
Right.
And I'm not an expert. I was in to reef tanks, and tangs were my favorite fish, and butterflies were my next favorite. But because of that, I had to have many tanks so I could have many tanks.
Right.
So I didn't have to mix them. But anyway,
The same
took me.
though, where they need constant nutrition sitting, not being shoveled in their gut, but like they need to be able to eat here and there because it needs to sit for them to digest it right, and they need more than the average fish, right?
That's why I thought tangs did better in adding them into a mature tank rather than a fairly new setup, because in a new setup, they depend on what you feed them. And if you're only going to feed them a couple times a day, and if there's not enough grazing material already developing in the tank itself that they can graze on to augment what they're eating, then they're going to have problems. But if you put a tank into a tank that is mature, then they could probably survive even without you putting food in.
They'll find it. They'll be able to find it. I agree. And I didn't add tanks to my reef until I had a very mature tank. I agree with that. And I love the comparison. Holly, I'm going to get to you, I promise. But Coral Work said, don't different pod species have different swimming patterns? Maybe there are certain movements that trigger the prey responses better for seahorses. Right. That's something that Cheryl is actually literally working on. With amphipods and copepods and all that. I've never seen a seahorse, aside from a fry, I've never seen an adult seahorse eat a copepod. I've never seen an adult seahorse eat an amphipod. But Cheryl has had a lot of luck with her seahorses. And we have already established that my seahorses, and probably Holly's too, are very spoiled. So, it was never a case of tough love where we're like, this is your food, eat it, and usually I use live foods like as a treat. So if they didn't like them, I didn't go back to it. But Cheryl is playing with what you're talking about. And absolutely, if you're talking about dwarf seahorses or fry, there are different copepods or amphipods that work better because they're pelagic versus benthic or whatnot. Right. So you are absolutely correct in what you're saying. You should take mysids from your reef tank for your early.
Not mysids.
Mysids, sorry.
Mysids.
We're going to talk about the difference between mysis and mysids here in just a second. But I wanted to let Holly chime in real quick because Holly is a twice a day feeder. Tell us how it works for you, Holly, and why you think it works.
Actually, mostly it's 3 times a day, but when I'm gone, it's 2 times a day.
Okay.
Like if I have to be gone all day, I'll feed them in the morning, and then I'll feed them when I come home in the afternoon. Or if, like, for instance, we were talking earlier, I'm going to go to Sacramento on Sunday for my birthday, so we're leaving early in the morning. The seahorses are going to get breakfast. And if I'm home before lights out, they'll get dinner. But if I'm not, they're not going to get dinner. They'll get breakfast the next day. Right. But normally I'm here pretty much all the time. So they get their 3 meals a day. And that kind of allows some room for once in a while I can get away for a full day and not have to worry about it because they've been fed enough all along that one day missing a meal or two is not going to be detrimental to them.
I see your question or your comment, Bonnie. We're going to get into the nutritional value of different foods here in just a second. But Holly, you made a great point because another question was, I know a ton of people, and it's all over online about this fasting thing. Like, first of all, I totally agree with what you said, Holly. I don't know how to mute this. If you guys are hearing it, I'm sorry. My notifications keep going off. Sorry. But I have had, because I figure out what my seahorses need to stay fat, healthy, and round and, wonderful. If I am on a vacation and my seahorse feeder stops on Sunday and we decide to stay until Tuesday, I'm not worried because they can go a day without. If you have new seahorses, don't do that. If you're not accustomed to horses, don't do that. But I'm just saying, once you know your seahorses and you know that they're healthy and you know that you're feeding them what they need and they're getting the nutrients, I'm not worried about a day. But I also disagree with fasting, but I'll be completely honest. The only reason I disagree with fasting is because I think because no one's proven to me that it's necessary. And I think I didn't take the time to look it up before we started. Sorry, guys. But I think the theory behind fasting is that there's some sort of fatty buildup in seahorses. And so if you fast them one day a week, then it helps. I've never seen any proof of that. I've never done it to any of my seahorses. Again, if my seahorses miss a day of feeding, I'm not freaking out and worried, but I don't do it on purpose. What are your guys' thoughts on that one?
I don't worry about it because there's people succeeding both ways.
So what do you mean? How are they succeeding both ways? Why do you think it's okay or
Well,
not?
there are people that keep seahorses and they're successful with it, and they give them a day each week without any food. And then there's people like me that never give them a day off, and I can be successful too. So I can't see that it's a big important thing.
Okay, good. I get you. Holly, thoughts on fasting?
I don't do it, like I said, other than when I have to, like because I'm gone.
Yeah.
That I try to feed them. For me, the 3 times a day is plenty. And like Ray was, I pretty much watch them. I'm taking care of 2 tanks during the time, and the time it takes me to make the rounds and change out socks and stuff in the morning and whatever is about the time it takes them to finish eating.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had the seahorses long enough that I pretty much know the amount to feed them, how long it takes
Right.
to eat. Now they do change every meal. They're not going to eat the same exact amount every time, because sometimes, like you were saying, sometimes Sadie just isn't hungry and doesn't really want to eat much. Other times she's a pig and wants to eat her and Dandy's food.
Yep.
And sometimes Dandy will be more interested in her than he is in eating his meal. Or, they don't always eat the exact same amount every time, but you kind of figure out a ballpark amount to go with.
Yep.
And they're done, usually, like Ray said, in about 15 minutes. And most of the time I can tell when they're done, because especially the older ones that I've had a long time, they'll show me they're done. They'll go somewhere else or turn their back on the food. Dandy will straight up turn around and face the other way, and he eats out of the dish. So I'm like, okay, well, he's done. So it's easy. We kind of worked together over the years, so it's kind of in the beginning a learning process to figure out about how much they'll eat and when, and when they're done. But you'll figure it out, and then it gets easier.
Absolutely.
But I totally agree with the ideal way to feed them is more times a day, and just less food. But it is, time consuming to feed them. And if you're not home all the time and that kind of thing, but it can be worked out.
One of the
I know
things
that Vince said he only feeds twice a day.
Right. I really, Vince, if you want to jump in and chat, you know, you're very successful with Seahorses. So your opinion's very valid and we want to hear it. But I would say, too, one of the things we both have mentioned, Holly, is you kind of, you figure it out. So you're not really like overfeeding or, you know, worried about anything because you know, kind of like approximately.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
about the same amount, and sometimes it ends up you overfed because they're not eating as much this meal as they ate the last meal. You can't.
Yep.
You can
It's
get
not
close, I'd say,
you,
but it's not perfect because they're not. They're not going to cooperate and eat the exact same amount
well,
every time, but it'll be close.
that's what bothered me about anyone giving an answer like
Of
4 to
how
6
many?
slices every feeding for every seahorse. That's like, no. And we've already discussed, like, my seahorses never touch the jumbo shrimp. If yours do, awesome. But I would probably start out trying to feed them 10 a piece, right? And see what you have to clean up. I'd rather waste a little
Yeah,
food,
see how many they'll eat.
clean it up, to figure out what they really will eat, because if they'll eat it again in a 15-minute period, Ray's already discussed why, you know, keeping them shoveling food in for half hour or an hour isn't going to work, because it doesn't work with their digestion. But yeah, so in Cora Works, you're talking about fasting in humans and the studies, and you're making grades. But I'll tell you, my brother and sister-in-law, I'm so jealous because they look amazing, because they did that intermittent fasting, right? Where they don't eat after 8 and they, you know, skip these hours. And yeah, I'm not that disciplined, but it worked for them. Like, whatever. But I don't think we should apply that to seahorses. And yes, absolutely. There's always more than one path to success, but we try on the channel to like cover the basics. Like, the most important thing is that you make sure the seahorses are getting enough food. That's, to me, number one. And then number two is making sure you have the filtration in the background to handle whatever eating and you know, wasting. So those are the two things for me. I was gonna do somewhere else with it, but let's see. Third part of the question, I swear there was. I thought there was. Um, Holly, anything to report while I'm looking this up? I swear there was another part.
No.
Okay. Hang on, I'll find it.
No, I know.
All right, I know Bonnie has to. Okay, let's talk about Ray. Let's talk about mysids versus mysis. What's the difference? Why do we care?
Well, basically, when you get into things like that, I don't know all the proper terminology to use for these, like, but they all come under an original topic or heading of mysis. Mysid are in a separate category, and they are basically full saltwater shrimp.
Mm-hmm.
With mysis, there are many different types. There are no full saltwater mysis. There are brackish mysis, and there are freshwater mysis.
Mm-hmm.
And there are tons of species, but we're limited in the hobby. We're limited to a certain number of them. Now, if you
Why
do
does it
have,
matter?
pardon?
Why does it matter?
What does what matter?
Why
Well,
does it matter if you have a
freshwater
mysis?
ones, because they don't have any of the DHA capabilities to feed to your seahorses. Whereas if you have brackish ones, they do have some capability that way. Not like the mysid do, but they have sufficient, obviously, or we wouldn't be surviving them on using Hikari.
Absolutely. So wait. So recap real quick. What you're saying is, If you have saltwater mysids to feed to seahorses, whether you're talking about frozen or fresh, they are what they literally eat in the wild, are going to have the DHA and all the nutrients that a seahorse needs. Great food, hard to find because most of our frozen foods are mysis, right? So then we have the difference between brackish and freshwater mysis. And there are many companies that claim to gut load the mysis before flash freezing, and they have all these promises and they soak them and whatever. But the bottom line is the actual shrimp does not have, well, it goes down in a step ladder. So mysids are the best. Then you got the brackish mysis. Then you got the mysis just freshwater, right? Freshwater mysis don't have some of the things that seahorses need. Like I'm not going to get into this scientific discussion about DHA because I'm not a scientist. I just know seahorses need it. It doesn't have it, right? So how are people keeping seahorses alive on just freshwater mysis, Ray?
Well, the freshwater mysis that we have access to basically is the PE mysis, and they're enriched in a way that unfortunately some of it's external. And if I ever use or when I did use the PE, I made sure I rinsed off to get what's on the outside of them, get that off before it washes off in the water. But the way they get enriched, there is an internal enrichment factor to it that they're being fed before they're packaged now. And so that contains DHA in there. And some people wonder why is DHA so important?
Mm-hmm.
Because seahorses do not have the capability of manufacturing DHA for themselves. They can't take EPA and change it into DHA. Some organisms, I understand, can. I think even we can, but I can't swear to that because I never studied them like that. But anyway, the DHA is important. So if you had strictly freshwater mysis that didn't have any kind of enrichment at all, and you have no way to enrich them properly, then your seahorses won't get by long term on that. So it's
Well,
much
sorry,
preferred to go with, yeah, much preferred to go with the brackish.
so
It would be ideal if they could go with the mysids, but I used to culture mysid shrimp and sell them, but it's such a labor-intensive move
sure.
to get any meaningful numbers in that. Like I had 10-gallon tanks set up here, and that still wasn't enough
Sure.
because you have to separate them week by week until they get to pretty well all the same size. Then you can lump them together.
Yep.
If you got one that's a little bit bigger than the other, they're going to eat them.
Yep. They're yeah, exactly. Hard to raise. I would say we do have some connections if you're looking for live mysids. We need someone out there who's going to, take on this responsibility of culturing them for the hobby. So if that's you, contact us. We'll put you in touch with the people. In the meantime, I would say I believe a brackish, right? I use Hikari, and I believe that it's brackish mysis. That's what I'm seeing as I look it up.
Yeah.
I have the way that I usually deal with this problem is that I will get them a live treat, whether it be adult live artemia or adult live mysis, but then I gut load it myself, right? Like I will feed some Dan's feed or whatever's available now to the artemia, feed that to the mysis, excuse me, and then feed them to the seahorses. So I'm getting them that vitamin package can, but I have also kept tanks completely 4 years without ever live food, completely on Hikari mysis. And they've done well and they've been fine. So it's kind of a toss up. Like, what the truth is we want them to have mysids and more DHA, but I have literally proven that you can do it just with Hikari mysis. PE mysis also. Holly, what are your thoughts? And then I see you, Vince. We're going to come to you in just a second.
I only feed Hikari mysis now.
Okay.
I've tried live foods with the adults, and it wasn't worth it to me. For the price of the food, and the Seahorses were not that really interested in it.
Really?
I've
My Seahorses
done
went
with
crazy
that.
live foods. They went
I
nuts.
tried amphipods, and that I had a Seahorse that was literally afraid of them. and,
Love it.
and then I did mysids, and I had some Seahorses interested and ate some of them, but for the price of the mysids and just the shipping was insane, and it wasn't that big a deal to them to make it worth it in my book. And they are doing fine on their frozen food, so I'm going to stick to that now.
Well, and like I said, I think Hikari, I'm 99% sure Hikari is brackish. So
Yes.
some DHA. It's not mysids,
Yeah.
but it's not mysis, right? Like it's not the freshwater mysis. So
I remember Dan saying, he said he's known people that have kept the Seahorses, 10, 12 years or more and only fed them the mysis.
Right.
Mysis. So he says that's a fine food for them. So I'm going to stick to that.
Yep.
It's a lot easier and a lot less expensive for me than the live food.
So, but the PE mysis, excuse me, I always mix my words up. PE mysis, they're freshwater, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, but you said
that's why they enrich them.
Yes, got it. Okay. Hi, Vince.
Hey, how you doing, you guys?
Hi.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
I did forget to say first started too, guys. Happy Valentine's Day. Mwah. To all of you for sure. Vince, what you doing? What's your input?
Well, I mean, I still buy the flat packs.
Yep.
And I buy the jumbo and the regular. And I haven't had any problems with the jumbo. And they eat it. There's some pieces that are too big, but then they're not just jumbo. I mean, because a lot of times I've ordered and they're out of one, and so I have to get the other one. But they both feed on them. Now I only feed twice a day, unless they're fried, and I'm home every day, but I'm still only going to feed them twice a day. And
what's your reasoning behind that?
Because I'm lazy.
Okay, I love it.
I don't want to put more work into it than I have to, and they're doing fine.
Okay,
but as far as pods, they graze all day.
Yeah,
and I know they're going after stuff inside the rock. You'll see them going inside the rock and pecking at stuff, just like the tangs. Like
finding a snack.
Yep.
In there.
So, Vince, though, when we're talking about the jumbo, because that's kind of where you and I disconnected when we were in the chat, because I was like, I've never had a Seahorse eat the jumbo.
I've never seen the jumbo version. How big are they?
Some of them can be pretty. Some of them can be pretty big.
They're almost.
I mean, every once in a while there will be some that are too big, and I have to yank them out because there's no way they're going to be able to take them. But for the most part, they can suck them down. A lot of times
my Seahorses like the bigger pieces of the regular Hikari.
Yeah, but Holly, if you haven't seen the jumbo, it's a
lot bigger.
Incredible difference.
I mean, they're bigger.
But Vince, and I hear you, but you're thinking of the difference in PE mysis mysis,
I don't do PE
and then
mysis
jumbo.
or mysis, but I only do the Hikari, the flat
Oh.
packs.
You think that Hikari mysis and PE jumbo are similar?
Well, I don't know about the. I'm
Uses
talking about
Hikari jumbo.
Hikari has jumbo.
Oh, you know
See,
what?
I've
Maybe
never
that's,
seen that. I'll have
Yeah.
to look at the pet store,
Look-
ask about it, and see what they look like. I've
Hikari
never
has
I have
jumbo.
both.
So maybe that's our disconnect. I thought
Yeah,
we were.
that could be.
I didn't know
It's-
Hikari had
yeah.
jumbo either. I thought we were
Yeah.
talking about.
Well,
PE.
I get it from Bulk Week, I can't say it. Bulk Week Reef Supply.
Yeah.
And,
Mhm.
Well, I'll have to try because I just know they wouldn't take the PE jumbo because those things are huge. But maybe
Yeah.
Hikari jumbo's a little smaller. I just
yeah, I mean,
No.
there's going to be some big ones in there, but I mean, most of them.
Most of them are a good size. I'll have to look for that
When-
because I've never seen it.
But when they do eat those jumbo shrimp, that's the other thing. The reason I prefer Hikari to PE mysis, and they're both good foods. Nobody's, but the reason I prefer Hikari is because when I feed PE mysis, they can absolutely eat it. But then I notice more of they eat a bite and it's like they start coughing and it's like they can't really get it down. And then
They
it's,
eat half and spit it out. Mine do that.
or it's they eat a piece, and maybe that's why this recommendation was for 4 to 6 jumbo shrimp, because if I've ever seen them eat, my seahorses eat a big piece of shrimp, they won't eat another for a few minutes. I mean, like for a minute, like because
Mhm.
they're swallowing it and trying to get it down, and it just seems like a complicated process instead of the ease of just snicking up all the Hikari.
Well, when I have a lot of them in one tank,
Right.
and I broadcast feed, I guarantee you there'll be nothing left practically when they're
Right.
done. I mean, they clean the bottom of the tank out too.
Mhm.
I mean, they'll
Right.
get it as it's going down, but then a bunch of them are always down at the bottom,
Mhm.
getting it off the bottom.
Well,
And then
and that's the
clean
and
it up.
that's the biggest problem when someone is brand new to seahorses. And I know there's some of you guys out there watching, and you're talking about how much do I feed 2 to 4 seahorses, and then you've got someone like Vince, and he's like, I've got 50. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I just throw food and they eat it all. I'm working with an all-in-one, so I'm trying to hone in on that answer. There's never going to, I don't agree being an exact answer, as we
Well,
discussed.
like
I start with
it's like-
I use the flat packs, and I'd say for 2 seahorses, start with about the size of your thumbnail, and you might need to put more in.
Yeah,
And
well,
just
and it depends.
what they do, because parts of the flat pack too, like toward the end, it's going to be thinner,
Yeah,
and towards the middle, it's fatter.
can be fat. Yeah,
And if
And-
you're
and-
not used to feeding them, one of the things that I figured out in the beginning when I started feeding my seahorses using the flat packs is that 2 would eat about the size of my thumbnail, give or take. And it depended on how thick that section of the pack was, but it's a chunk like this.
So
And
the
then
only,
oh, that was a little bit too much,
Mhm.
or that's not enough. I need to add a little more, but it's a good guide.
wait, hang on. The only reason I'm making faces over here and going, I totally agree with you, but starting out, like first time, what I was saying in the chat is I would do more than that, because I would rather waste a little bit of food,
Mhm.
meaning clean it up afterwards. Don't let it, stay in there. But I would rather feed them a piece like a quarter,
Mhm.
say, and then see that, oh, that's too much, and then hone it down into the thumbnail versus they actually need, a little bit more than giving it to them because you never knew. So I always start a little bit bigger, knowing that it's probably too much, and then hone it down each feeding.
Well,
But
thumbnail would be too much sometimes. But I probably have bigger thumbnails than you.
well, and actually, Holly, I don't think I've ever kept just 2 seahorses. No, I have. So, anyways, Vincent, you were gonna say something. What were you gonna say?
Well, I think I mentioned it in the chat earlier. I mean, you got to learn your seahorses.
Sure.
And the reason I jumped in on that is because the advice she was given was from a reputable company.
Absolutely.
And I've read their stuff before.
Yep.
And I won't argue with what they're telling her. I think the logic behind the 6 pieces, 4 to 6 pieces a couple times a day is the fact of their digestive systems and how they're going to absorb the nutrients and not just force it out, like Ray mentioned also. And but you got to learn your tank. You got to learn your seahorses. I mean, it's the same thing with fish. You after a while you pick it up and you'll get it. And she's on the right track.
I absolutely agree with what you're saying, Vince, and I think you give great advice. The only reason that I disagree with anybody saying 4 to 6 is, again, as we've discussed, every seahorse is different. You just said that also.
Yeah.
But
I agree.
Again, I disagreed with Holly too, because I would start with more. Always start with more. It's more important for the seahorses to get the food and the nutrients. If you can do more feedings, even better. But if you can only do 2, I'm not saying let them eat for an hour and stuff their gullet. Ray already discussed why that's not a good idea. But feed them more than you think they need as you're getting to know them, so that you make sure you're never not feeding them enough. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
A thumbnail
It
size
makes
is usually more than they'll eat, more than mine will eat.
And
For
I
2.
agree.
2
I agree.
seahorses.
Yes. And I'm usually doing 4, first of all. And second of all, I agree with you. I'm just saying, if you're brand new and you're just figuring this out, freaking throw some food in there. Don't throw a whole flat pack in there, okay, guys? But I mean, break off chunk and then you're going to figure it out as you go. Oh my gosh, they just wasted me all this money because they only ate half of it. I'm going to half it next time. But if you start off saying, okay, I'm only doing this much, and then your seahorses end up with caved in sides, no good, right? So just, you hear the differences of opinion. We're all after the same thing. We all end up at the same thing, and that is that seahorses are all different, and you got to figure them out, Ray, did you have anything to say to any of that, or?
Oh, I'm sitting here doing some typing here and didn't follow.
All good. Zen Ginger did say the Hikari jumbo shrimp are available at Bulk Reef Supply. I'm going to have to try that because I didn't even know they had a jumbo shrimp. But I know that what a funny thing
I'll
is,
have
though.
to ask at the local fish store. I won't order food.
Oh, I'll tell you what.
Delivery is too weird where I live. I can't trust it. But I've
never
have
had
a
a problem.
fish store that could probably order it.
Definitely depends on where you live. And I would say also that it really does depend on the seahorses, guys, because I just know I've had seahorses that will only eat mysis that has eyeballs. I've had Lucy, I said in the chat, had seahorses that she couldn't add peppermint shrimp, big old peppermint shrimp to her tank because the seahorses would snick them up. So you just never know. Mine never have been that way. I can add peppermint shrimp. They don't, mess with any of that. They won't eat the jumbo, but it just kind of, I spoil my seahorses also. So you never know. Well, Vincent, what were you going to say?
Well, to me, a seahorse is a predator in its own right.
Yep.
And it's going to go after prey if it's hungry. and
Mhm.
it's going to eat. And so I can see them going after a shrimp or going after something else because they are predators. But as far as getting it delivered, if I buy five packs of, no, what is it? Well, I get 2 pounds more if I order online with shipping overnight
Mhm.
than if I buy locally for the same price. Because each flat pack is 1 pound, and for $100, I can get 5 pounds shipped to me overnight. And it will, the way they ship it with the dry ice, I've never had an issue. I
Wait,
mean,
from where?
that dry ice can keep it for days. I
From
mean,
where?
from Bulk Week Supply.
Okay, all right. See,
Yeah,
I've never
and
tried them. Okay, go ahead.
yeah, and so I never had a problem. And so it's so much cheaper to buy it in bulk. Just buy a whole bunch, order it overnight.
Yeah, I
And
don't know that I could keep bulk because I don't have enough tanks to justify bulk
well,
buying, really.
you wouldn't have to.
But it's only $20 a pack at my local fish
Yeah,
store for the
they,
flat packs, so they're
they're
not.
like $14 a pack.
But Dan has talked about too, before you go buying in bulk, like if you don't have that many tanks, you don't want to store
Sit around that long, yeah.
because
Well, I
Or if
go
my
through.
power goes out and my freezer's not, because I don't
Thanks.
always put the freezer on the generator.
right. And the other thing is, Vincent, I think we've talked before, and I think you have a really good deep freezer. That was the catch. As Dan said, if you have a deep freezer that measures, I can't remember the temperature, but like a serious,
-20.
what was it?
-20.
Minus
Yeah, I mean,
20.
yeah, we have a
Then
deep
you're
freeze.
okay. But in the average freezer, you
Yeah.
don't want to keep that much that long, right? So just, you know, again, we're just, sharing different thoughts. I'm trying to pull up, I wanted to show Vincent some pictures real quick if I
Yeah,
could,
I
but
live out in the boonies too, so most of my deliveries come to the post office and they're not open on the weekend. So if I get a delivery after hours,
Well, they won't
they've
deliver it.
left stuff like sitting outside. Like some of these delivery companies, like my buckets of
oh,
salt
hell,
have sat outside the post office all weekend before.
well, see, and I've never had that happen, but I have ordered from, I'm not going to name names, but not the place you mentioned, but other places that I have very much respect for, but
Yeah,
I would
it's
get
the
in frozen food.
delivery company
Right.
that makes the difference
Exactly.
who they're going to use.
And the thing is, it'll come in, it'll be boxed well, it'll have all the major bubble wrapping, it'll have the ice packs in it, and they're thawed, and so's the food. And then you're like, do I even want to feed it? Right? So getting it
Well,
in.
I buy salt from Petco, and they use a company called On Track for delivery here.
I think that's who Dan
And
used.
they deliver like at nighttime, and they'll leave my stuff like outside on the dirt road because I
Oh,
live on a big property with a fence and all that, and they won't come in the fence sometimes with.
no.
So they'll leave stuff out on the
Hell
street,
no.
and then it's like an Easter egg hunt to find
Oh, that's awful.
my
I
stuff.
thought you were going to say something totally different. I
And
must.
fortunately, nobody in the neighborhood wants to steal buckets of salt,
Thank
thankfully.
God, right?
But I've
No.
had other stuff stolen out there.
All right,
Salt's gotten expensive.
real quick, Vincent, I just wanted to share these real quick. I meant to take a video, you guys, of feeding the seahorses and then it done. I'm sorry. I will try to by next week to give you a better idea. Maybe we'll do it when I first start next week, and I'll show you a video of feeding them and how much I put in the net, how much, all that. I'll try to get that done by next week. But I did want to show this. Why? Screen sharing is not allowed. Why is it not letting me share? Okay, there we go. All right. So can you guys see? I made this into a meme. Vincent, this is your big badass male that now runs my tank. I mean, he just looks so awesome to me. I think he's so cool. And then look at the sparkles on this gal. This is another seahorse from Vincent. Just wanted to show how pretty they are. There she is, all bright and sunny. And I mean, look at the markings and the saddle marks. I mean, you have really good seahorses, Vincent. Look at those sparkles. It's ridiculous. They love the saloon, Holly, still. And just this was another thing I put in the chat, but look at the stomach, right? So this is what you want your seahorse's stomach to look like. Fat, it doesn't have to be puffing out or whatnot, but it doesn't need to be sunk in at the sides. If you look at a seahorse straight on and the sides are caved in, no good. That's all right. But I was just teasing Vincent in that. So, all right, I'm done. I just wanted to show you how pretty they are and how well they're doing.
No babies?
No babies. I think we figured out that it was because I overcrowded the all-in-one. I think that's it. I lost a male. I'm separating out some of the others so that it's maybe just the two of them, and we're gonna go from there. Yeah. I think I will have soon. I think they were doing me a favor because I've got all this stuff going on at work. So if they had babies, I would have been overwhelmed as hell.
This is a good time of year.
Yeah.
This is a good time of year too for them to mate comes springtime.
Yep. Ray, I like your little using the see.
Yeah, but it didn't type them together for the last one.
No, it worked. I see it. I love it.
Perfect.
That's perfect. Let's see. And Ray, you're saying, okay, I have a question about what Ray just said real quick. And then we'll answer Bonnie's question. And then guys, I got to be at work at like 4 a.m. So I'm going to have to end it quick. But please pay attention to the posts on Facebook and here on YouTube, because there might just be something special happening next week. Wink, wink. Watch for the post. We're going to have fun next week. I promise you. But now what was I going to ask? Now I completely forgot. Ray, you said take mysid shrimp out of your reef tank to feed to your seahorse tank. I can tell you that.
No, you don't want to just put them in to feed. You want to seed the seahorse tank with it so that in time they'll grow and get some meaningful numbers. And they're pretty good at avoiding seahorses, but seahorses will go at mysids with a fervor that they don't go after other food normally. Mm-hmm. And it helps that they can't just snick them just at will, that they have to work at it because it's delaying that feeding so that they're grazing throughout the day.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
More nasty.
Now, if you don't have anything in the tank where the mysids are capable of self-culturing,
yeah,
you need something like rock rubble in there so that the little ones can evade the bigger ones from the cannibalization.
Yep. As I mentioned before, if anyone's interested in this for their tanks or for culturing purposes to share with the rest of us, because I'm not going to culture them, it's too difficult. But we can definitely put you in contact with the right people to get the mysids. But Ray, when you mentioned in the chat that seeding the tank from the reef tank, Carol would freak out for you saying that because she was worried about cross contamination, as was Dan. For me, I
just peroxided them.
What?
I put a little bit of peroxide in the water.
There you go.
And I didn't do a lot. but I put a bit of peroxide in, and they weren't in for a long time, but it was fairly minimal. But then again, they were my own tanks, and I had faith in it, I guess.
Right. There's
But
so the only point I wanted to make is Ray's talking about a reef tank that he's kept for 10 years and a Seahorse tank that he's kept for 10 years. That's a little bit different than brand new tanks or even within a year tanks. And you do have to worry about cross contamination. And what Ray just mentioned is peroxide, and that is like the key to everything. If you do have to like seed a tank with mycetes or whatever, peroxide's the answer. If you don't know how to do it, we'll cover it in detail. Just let us know. Go ahead, Ray. Were you gonna say?
I don't remember the strength of the peroxide that I used, but I know I experimented at first. And by the way, the Seahorse tanks I was using them in back then were only a year or two old.
Oh, well, all right.
Like this, we're looking back 20 years ago,
Right.
21 years ago.
So the advice now
And,
is, yeah.
So I would take, before I put them in the tank, I was using the peroxide, and I would take 1 or 2 little mycetes, I'd catch them, put them into some water with a given amount of peroxide, and if they died, then I went weaker. But I don't remember what strength I finally ended up with. It's a long time ago.
Gotcha.
Well, if you have a healthy reef and your fish are healthy and you've had that reef set up for a number of years or stuff like that, I'd never worry about cross contamination with Seahorses from that tank. And because that's a healthy environment for the fish. And it's
Yeah,
gonna
I
be
did.
for the Seahorses.
Vince,
And,
I'm so sorry I disagree with you completely. Here's the problem with that premise, right? I know we trust ourselves, and if we've had a reef going for a really long time, it's great and whatever. But the reef tank can have aptasia, hydroids,
Well,
parasites that certain fish can handle that then Seahorses cannot, right?
well, no,
So
yeah, but the thing is, I said healthy reef. If you have a reef with
If it
parasites and
doesn't
stuff
have
like
those,
that, then you'd have cross contamination. But if you have no no aptasia, you don't have any of that stuff in the tank. The fish have no disease.
mhm,
They've all been quarantined before they've been put into that tank. It's been set up for a number of years.
mhm.
It's a healthy environment because, for one, you're not adding new livestock. Because
True.
most all the problems we have with reef tanks is when we put
Add.
new livestock in, we add stuff to it, and we put it in. But once that tank is set up and them fish are healthy, that system is like an ecosystem.
So I'm gonna play Dan for 10 seconds. I'm Dan now. I need to pull my hair back, and I need. So what Dan would say, just if you're erring on the side of caution, and here's the bottom line: it depends on your risk tolerance level, right? As Vince just said, if you know your reef and you trust your reef and you trust your sea, if you know what you're doing, I'm not telling you anything. All right, just ignore me. But if you're brand new, I would have separate nets. I would not put anything from a reef into a Seahorse tank. And here's why. It's because, and Tammy Wise wrote a big long article about this too. It's because fish, say a clownfish, can carry, oh gosh, I'm not going to be able to think of the word, you guys. What's the word when they carry a disease, have the symptoms? Asymptomatic, is that the word?
Mhm.
So a fish can have something and never show it, never have a problem. They just carry it like I don't know how you would scientifically explain it, but they
Most
can't
fish in
carry
the reef tank don't have the susceptibility that Seahorses do.
right. But I'm just saying, there's a huge article. I'll find it for you guys. And I'm not trying to scare anybody. If you trust your stuff. Don't worry about this. But I'm just saying, if you're new, I would not cross-contaminate, because fish can carry stuff that they can handle, whereas Seahorses can't handle it, right? Vice
Well,
versa.
see, I think that gets kind of blown away because even, I'm not going to name names, but one of the biggest sellers right now stateside has tank mates that are safe for
Hey,
seahorses.
you know what? Yep.
And people are successful with those tank mates.
I totally
And,
agree
and
with you.
they're an outside fish.
No,
that
no, no,
is
no, no,
coming
no.
in.
The person you're talking about, though, Vince, is captive breeding those tank mates. They're
Yeah,
not.
but most all the fish we have now in the hobby that people would
Okay,
even
so
think
so
about it are
let's just
tank
make.
bred.
So I will agree with you if we make that clarification. If every tank, or I'm sorry, not tank, if every fish in your reef tank is captive bred, preferably by the same breeder of your seahorses, I wouldn't worry a bit. I agree with that statement.
See, now I have stuff that I know in my reef tank, and I got seahorses in it, and they're not
I know, but the problem with that, Vince, when we're talking to new people, and I'm not trying to be argumentative. I'm sorry if I'm coming across that way. That's not how I'm trying to be. It's just
That's
that
all right.
I'm an over worrier. Okay, I will always be more careful. You at home have to make your own decision for your tanks. It's just that I've had problems before by mixing stuff, but that was back then when all of the fish in my reef tank were wild caught, right? They were not captive bred. There was a big difference. I know what you're saying, Vince, that you have things in your reef tank that maybe aren't captive bred and you've had luck. But that's what we see all the time. We see people that come around and say, "Hey, I've had this luck for, so many years," and then other people won't have that luck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
no.
I'm just
Well,
telling
I think Kelly's just concerned about people starting out and getting the wrong message.
Well, yeah.
And
I'm
being
not
careful
saying that.
enough.
I'm not saying that because I'm kind
But
of talking about
Vince is very experienced in what he does with
cross-contamination.
tanks.
It's not.
So
let's let
different.
talk.
Well,
Go ahead, Vince.
because I'm bringing it to the cross-contamination.
Mhm.
That we shouldn't have to. It's not as critical. I mean, to me, it's not. If your tanks are good and stuff like that, it's not going to be, to me, that critical. I mean, because when I work from a reef tank to my seahorse tank or whatever, I'm not washing my hands in between and stuff like that. I'm just going
my
to do
gosh. We'll agree to disagree.
it. Man, I'm not. And I haven't had any problems, but I know my systems are clean.
So
They're
I
clean
will say
systems.
this. As you guys watch this at home, you can see the differences of opinion. And I will say that my seahorses from Vince, I have seahorses from Vince that are extremely healthy. So maybe his, not worrying about all the little stuff made his seahorses stronger and healthier. I don't know. I'm still going to say my opinion is no cross contamination, please. I absolutely wash my hands in between. I have different nets for every tank. Oh my gosh. But I'm a worrier. So it just depends on who you are, I think. And yeah, Ray, you said not all LFS will be honest. Many will say captive bred. Right. But like Vince is talking about his own tanks. That's the difference, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so.
I'm not. I mean, now
And
I
I'm
know.
not
I know my fish
saying
ain't all. I know all my fish aren't captive bred because of the types they are.
Zen told me to go la la la
But, they,
la la la.
but they've all been quarantined
Right.
Yeah.
before I got them.
Well, and Vince,
And
that's a big difference too, is that there are so many, you can get captive bred Mandarin now. Like that wasn't even a
Yeah.
thought when I started. There was no possibility of that. Mandarin that'll eat fish food? No, that would never, no way. So things are different now. I'm still old school and cautious. I'm still going to give my opinions, right? If you're like me and you're want to have a seahorse tank that doesn't have problems, be very cautious. But I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm just saying, it's a different way of doing things. And especially the other part is, not trying to call you, Vince, but when you have a lot of seahorses, it's different than when you have 2 or 4, right? Because if you have 2 and something goes wrong and it's from a reef tank or whatever, then it's almost like a catastrophe. You've got 1 seahorse left, he's alone, whatever. When you have a bunch, it's easier to take risks. I'll just say it that way.
But when you're taking a risk and you're not losing,
that's true.
It's kind of different, and part of the reason is because I got too many in this tank.
Mm-hmm.
I want to thin this tank out, and I want to put them in this tank. And I guess that's where I started doing it. But when I got into the seahorses, my original tank was a reef tank.
Mm-hmm.
And I had success in my reef tank. And that was 30 years ago, something like that, over 30 years. And
go ahead.
And and even with the temperature,
Can you repeat that, Vincent? I interrupted you, and I apologize. Can you repeat what you said about temp?
I got into seahorses. I mean, it was before I met my wife, and we've been married 34 years, going 35 years, and because I had them when we met, and it was in reef tank, and they were reed eye, and back then they just sold them. I didn't know anything about them. Put them in my reef tank. The temperature was what I kept it at, 78 degrees. Had them for years. They bred, fry, but they got absorbed by the tank, because I didn't even bother taking them out. I'd see the babies and they just filter or whatever, took them out. And so I guess I never was panicky about keeping them. I've never had a chiller for them. And I keep my tanks at room temperature. Reef tank, I keep it at 78 degrees. And I've had success. Maybe everybody can't do it.
That's it. That is what it is, Vincent, and Ray and Cheryl and Dan and I, Holly, all of us have talked about this a lot. There's nothing wrong with you sharing what has worked for you. Absolutely. We appreciate you coming and sharing your experience.
But see,
and I wait, let me finish.
Yeah, I'm gonna
I
let you
say absolutely that your seahorses are healthy because I have 2 of them, right? And they're awesome. Mm-hmm. But I would never tell someone new to follow your advice because
I don't.
78 degrees is not a good idea.
Yeah, well, I don't tell people to take my advice because I probably, if I'm talking one-on-one with somebody, I'm probably going to give them different advice.
Sure.
Just because
and
I know, it's the same thing as I've always didn't encourage people to start out with seahorses. That's something I never did.
What I think, though, is I think that you got some extreme seahorses and that what happened for you worked, and that could work for other people. And I'm not saying it can't. I'm just saying, again, guys, anybody new, let's back it up and do it the safe way so that you don't lose your seahorses, right?
These are just my thoughts.
And I want you to share.
But I think that sometimes you have to condition your fish.
Yep.
You have to condition them to live in different, be able to handle different temperatures. Mm-hmm. They need to be handle different environments. And if you keep a temperature at 74 degrees constantly, and you have a power outage, and it's 80 degrees, 90 degrees outside, and your temperature shoots up, well, then seahorses kept at
So-
74 degrees are going to take it a lot harder than the seahorses.
So wait, time out. Totally agree with what you just said. Here's the problem that I have with what you just said. You're talking about conditioning seahorses to live in battle weary environments. So what our recommendation is to not ever let them be in battle weary
Yeah,
environments.
but you can't always do that. See, you can't always do that.
Okay, but you're gonna lose your
Well,
seahorses a lot.
The
quicker
problem
conditioning
though
them.
with the temperature isn't that they can't take the temperature. It's that if there's high organics in the water and
Bacteria.
you get bacteria build up and get an infection. Now, when I was raising fry, I didn't have a way to keep their water cool, and they were born in the summertime. So their tank water in the baby's home was sometimes 80 degrees or more. But I did a lot of water changes because they were fry, so I didn't get the bacteria, build up from that. Most likely is how they survived, because they didn't care about the temperature. They were fine and happy at 78
Ray, do you
degrees.
have anything to say? I'm about to pull my hair out over here. I'm literally about to, I'm literally going, "Ah!"
I mean, the
Like-
temperature itself, like the places they live can get really high temperature, but they're not getting the bacteria buildup.
Well,
living in a box. Right. Bacteria buildup. Exactly.
But a good
Whew.
ecosystem in an aquarium, which is what we should be striving for, is trying to have a good balanced system, should be able to handle
So Vincent,
the changes and along with the livestock in it.
time
I mean,
out.
that's where
Time out. Was your tank a very balanced ecosystem that could handle anything you threw at it?
no, it wasn't.
I'm literally just out here going, hey, anybody new, don't listen to these people because they're nuts. Because yes, once you have 10 years experience, you can determine what you can play with. But if you are brand new and setting up for seahorses, you got to do it the right way. Keep the temperature low, keep the bacteria level low, keep the organics low, so that you can keep seahorses. I'm not trying to be like any kind of way. I just, it drives me crazy when people do this, because here's what you can do now, right? I can do lots of things now, keep multiple, 30 seahorses and whatever. I'm not going to come online and say, hey, it's cool, keep them at 80 degrees, because that's
Well,
nuts.
I didn't say that. I never said that.
And I wasn't keeping them at 80 on purpose. They were fry. They didn't have a chiller.
I know. And I'm sorry, guys. I'm
They
sorry.
had ice packs floating on top.
Yeah, but I wasn't saying keep your tank at 80.
Okay. I'm just saying,
Don't panic.
If you're don't panic is a great piece of advice. If you are brand new to seahorses, please try to keep.
Don't listen to Vince.
No,
Don't listen to Vince. Yeah.
listen.
Well,
Vince
don't
is
panic just because something happens with there's a water temperature that goes higher. It doesn't mean you're going to lose them all. Don't take it that way.
right.
Just
and I will say,
it.
Vince, I actually, Vincent, I really want to hook you up with someone that came, I think it was last week, because he's looking into going into commercial breeding, right? He needs your advice, because I'm really good for the new guy that's scared and, doesn't want to lose their 2 seahorses. You're extremely good for, hey, here's how you condition a seahorse to breed successfully long term. So there's nothing wrong with what you're saying. I just get scared. So that's all. I appreciate your seahorses and your advice. I just got to put my 2 cents in too. That's all. All right, I'm done. No.
You know, I learned a lot from Ray. I mean,
Yes, I know.
from years ago, you know, I mean, it's you know, it's just, this has always been a hobby of mine that's, you know, that I just can't seem to kick, but an expensive one too. But
I hear. And I want to be clear for anybody who thinks that I was being a little bitchy tonight. I am. I'm freaking tired. I'm covering my boss's vacation again. I've had no sleep. I love Vince. I literally own 2 of his Seahorses, and they're amazing. And I'm not trying to say any kind of thing. Different ways, different strokes for different folks, right? I just try to look out for the new guy, the brand new guy that's, you know, that's my only game. But
Just remember, Vince has years and years of
Years.
experience in
Let's-
successful tank caping.
that's it, absolutely right. Much more than me. So there you go. And Ray, what'd you say? You got to say what you want to say out loud. Nobody else can see your typing.
Which part?
You said
Vince, when you get to be my age, it's easier to work your way out of it because you get to the point you just can't do all the stuff you need to do to keep them going.
right. But
it
and
gets
you said,
hard.
Ray, what'd you say about short-term fluctuations?
You know, I posted it there and
Okay.
The comments, yeah.
Long-term with bacteria and other.
it's the short-term fluctuations. Like you get a power break or something and you got a hot day and the temperature's going to go up. Well, the pathogens that are going to cause the problem, the bacteria or parasites and that,
They're
the
not-
expansion isn't going to happen just in that time period.
Right.
It's when, if you have the temperature elevated long term, then you have that, if they get the food supply that they need from elevated DO levels, then that expansion is going to happen and you're going to have problems. And the only way that you can avoid it at that point is if you happen to have seahorses that have better than normal immune capabilities.
So let me just real quick tell you what happened to me, literally happened to me. In my tank of the first 3 surviving fry, they were adolescents. They were about 2 months old. I had them in a really not good tank. It didn't have a sump. It was just a tank. I only had 3, so I thought I was cool. They were tiny little buggers, right? I thought I'm just doing okay. I put macros in. I had sand in. It was likely so full of organics that I couldn't even tell you. But I was new to it, so I didn't know what I was doing yet. So all I'm trying to say is that's why I kind of look out for new people, is because in that situation, my temperature spiked. Literally what Vince said, my power went out. I was at work. My temperature spiked. I came home. It was 80 degrees in that tank. And then within, I'd say 2 to 3 weeks, all of a sudden, the seahorses started getting sick. And I'm like, what the hell? And Dan helped me figure out, oh, it was the temp spike. But as they pointed out, it wasn't really the temp spike. It was that my tank was already kind of not great and full of organics, and I wasn't cleaning it enough. It was sump, so that when the temp spiked, their immune systems, they stressed out, is what happened. They stressed, and everything that was already in the tank that they were able to not have a problem with was all of a sudden a problem. So agree, Vincent and Ray said that if you're gonna play with this kind of thing, make sure you know what you're up against and make sure that you're keeping that tank ridiculous clean. Like really good equipment, make sure you know your tank before you play with this stuff. That's all. And yeah, Ray, you're right. Today's keepers are benefiting from the trials and tribulations 20 more years ago. And like I said, you saw me get a lead, Vince. Vince, you know I love you. So it's nothing personal. And the thing is, I agree with what he's saying. I just worry about newcomers. And so, you know, take what you want and figure it out for yourself. You will learn your tanks. You will figure it out for yourself. And the more experience you get, the more you'll be able to experience, right? That makes sense? Anything else new with you though, Vince?
No, I mean, just spent about 10, 11 days in New Mexico, and then,
Oh, cool.
Nice.
well, went to see family. And
That's awesome.
That's where my family is.
they're up in Santa Fe or Taos. You're from
Santa Fe.
Santa Fe?
Yeah. My brother and his wife live in Santa Fe, and now after the fire here, my mom lives there too. They have a mother-in-law unit attached, which is nice, and she's got a grandchild now, 2 years old, so she's loving it.
Yeah, we were hoping for snow while we were there. It happened a week after we left.
Oh, yeah, they've been getting a lot of snow this year. I noticed in Santa Fe, which is funny because usually they get more than us here where I live. And last year we got more than they did. It was an unusual year for us. We got a lot of snow and they didn't. And now it's back to normal. They got a lot of snow and we didn't.
Sorry, guys. I don't mean to keep looking away. I just got a phone call from guess who? Work. Lovely.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to call them back. But I mean, you guys are more important. Is there anything else? And Vince, I feel like a terrible person for like being this way when you finally come in and join us because again, guys, he has so much more experience than me. He's been doing this so much longer than me.
Well, it don't bother me. I mean, it's just my opinions.
Be friends. All right.
Just my opinion.
And I appreciate your opinion. And like I said, I want to put you in touch with the guy from last week because anybody trying to commercially breed needs your expertise.
Is he from California?
Do you remember Holly?
I want to say yes.
LA? David?
Sounds right. Maybe.
David or Dan?
Might be.
Hispanic last name?
He's in Southern California, I think, LA area, right? Yeah, I want to say yeah.
He's got a Hispanic last name?
I don't know him. I don't remember, so. But I want to say he did mention he was from area, so.
Yeah. Well, I think I know who he is, and I think I've talked to him. And
okay.
And well, I've talked to him a long time ago. I probably got his information.
Well, if not, I'm going to put you in touch because again, and anybody out there who watches the live stream, if you're not new and you're looking to commercially breed or expand what you're doing with seahorses, I mean, we're here for that too. I just always worry about the new guy, right? That's just me. Like at work, they make fun of me because I'm too nice, guys. I'm just always worried about that. So.
Well, that's your focus, though. Here, usually, is helping people who are new to seahorses.
Yeah,
and I'm not thinking about how long a person's been in most of the time. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, it's really good though for people to see different opinions. I really think it is. I mean, you know.
Yeah, and there's different perspectives, you know, on keeping too. You know, like Dan always said, different people have different risk tolerances, you know, depending on how they see their tank and, you know, how they feel about the hobby. Like I baby the seahorses. The seahorses are pretty spoiled, but I don't treat my other fish the same way. You know, it's different. The seahorses are almost more like a dog or cat to me. That I mean, the goldfish just get food tossed in once a day, and I walk away. They're all good. You know, I cater to the seahorses.
Do you name your goldfish?
No.
Oh.
No. I have. There's some fish I've named. Some fish I name, and some fish I don't. And a lot of times I'll just refer to them by what they are. You know,
So,
like
hey, I
people are
say-
goldfish goldies because they're goldfish. You know,
Right.
I have catfish that I'll just say, oh, the catfish, and there's
Yeah,
4
but
of them,
here's
right? But I
the
name all the seahorses. I
here's
don't
the
name every
reason.
other fish.
No, I can give you guys an actual reason. First of all, hi Sean, Peggy, and Rise. I guess. Glad you're drinking a lovely bottle of wine, and glad you jumped in. Seahorses are always saltwater. Anybody who tells you different is lying. Okay, so the reason that I name my seahorses, and the reason that in the Seahorse Whisperer chat when we were discussing feeding, I said, "Oh, the main reason that I also, in addition to like nutrients, their digestive system, everything we've talked about tonight, the reason I like to feed my seahorses is because that's the fun time. Seahorses are different than other. Once you keep them, you will love them because they interact with you. They're like
Yeah,
little puppies. I mean,
yeah, they are.
I've had fish, you know, I've seen reef tanks where, okay, they see your hand, my clownfish in my reef tank. If they saw me coming, they were biting my freaking fingers, assholes. But, anyways, I mean, I'm just saying, fish do respond
Mhm.
to the human, but seahorses, like, literally, they see you coming and they're like, let me dance for you, right? I swear to God.
Yeah,
I mean, I've got
yeah,
videos. And then
yeah,
you feed them and they're like, they look at you and
yeah.
what you're doing, and they're like, is she really gonna feed us? If I dance like this, will she feed us? And they're puppies, I
They're
swear. They're
smart enough to pay attention. I got a birthday card in the mail the other day, and I showed it to Dandy, and he was looking at it. He came over to
okay,
check
all
it
right,
out and
right,
was looking
Holly.
at it.
No, you lost me. Those horses ain't reading a
So he was
freaking card.
interested. He's all, what do you got there, Mom? Let me check that out.
I don't believe that seahorses can read cards, but I believe he was.
No, but they're interested in
Yes,
what you're doing and what you
they are.
have, and
Sean had my
you're
significant other.
showing it to me, so it must be something. What am I
Right.
gonna
What
do
is
with that?
we put in our tank? Can we hitch to it? Can we
Yeah,
eat it? Right.
yeah.
They're really selfish little creatures, but it seems like they're interacting with you very much so. And Sean and I, literally, my significant other, have this thing where, for some reason, when I have newer seahorses, the males are like, they'll come right up to the glass, interact with me, but the females are kind of like, eh. And then if he walks up, they come right up to him. He said he thinks it's his hat. He thinks that they think it's a crown. I don't know.
Yeah.
But um,
That's
both
big
Ray and Vince are rolling their eyes right now and saying these crazy women talking about their dang kid seahorses. But I'm telling you, seahorses are fun. They really are. They're the most fun fish I've bred freshwater angelfish, discus. I've done saltwater. Seahorses are the most interactive fish I've ever kept. Would you agree with that, you guys? The
Nope.
males?
I totally agree with that. Now, here's something interesting though that I've learned in keeping, because in my
Say
display
it.
tank I've had other things besides the seahorses,
Right?
and the other things that I had with the seahorses learned to be more like the seahorses and
Said that.
interactive as well. Like my goby is, he comes out and eats when the seahorses have their meals. He wants to eat from the turkey baster. I feed him. He comes out of his cave and waits,
Yep.
looks, and I feed him with the turkey baster. I had peppermint shrimp, and they would come and eat with the seahorses. Um, my mandarin would eat out of the seahorse dish, and
Mm-hmm.
she started out only eating pods. She was probably wild. That was not a captive bred mandarin, but
Well, and
she
how
learned
many
eat from the Seahorses, saw them eating in their dish, and eventually started coming to the dish and picking at the food too. So
Yep.
it's
You just never know. All right, you guys, I am getting bugged by work. This has been so much fun talking with you guys and just, even, hashing stuff out. It's fun because you can see the different ways of doing things and make your own decision at home. But is there anything else for tonight, or can we come back next week and pick it up again?
Nothing from here.
I got nothing.
I want you to come back every
I'm
week.
good.
I have so much admiration and respect for you. I want
Where-
everybody else to know that.
Where's Cheryl?
I know. We need to find out
Yeah.
where Cheryl's been. Absolutely. Let me hunt her down because next week we might just have a surprise wink wink. Pay attention to posts and you'll find out what I'm talking about. But we might have some special occasions happening next week. That's all I'll say with that. But cheers, Zen Ginger. Cheers, Bonnie. Thank you, Bonnie, for the question because it really helped us, have this conversation and hash things out. So, but for tonight, guys, let's all say Happy Wine Wednesday so I can call my word. I'm so thrilled.
Good night, all.
Night.
Happy Wine Wednesday. See you next week. Watch for